Welcome everyone. It is me, Nina Sachs from Yoga Awakening Africa, and today I am delighted to be speaking with Cam Shackleton. Cam, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks, Nina, and it's lovely to be with you and to see you. Yay!
Yay. I mean, it's
Me.
been a while because
Yeah.
our journeys started or crossed when you started coming to yoga at the Tokai Yoga Studio. It's kind of like where we met. I know, like, when you filled out your registration form, it was like, and she has this, and she has this, and she has this, and she has this. I was like, oh my word, take this woman away, send her somewhere else. But I guess yoga teachers, we invite everyone in, and we work very gently and slowly.
Well,
So
I'm very glad you didn't say go away because that would have been devastating.
so Cam, you're kind of like your issues, your challenges, they like stem a lot more from autoimmune issues and stories in that way. Do you want to give us like a little update as to like what your journey was and kind of like how you decided to navigate the kind of like the healing process?
Yeah, I'm just going to shut that door that bounced open. Oh, okay. It doesn't want to shut properly, so it's probably going to do that again. Apologies for that.
All good.
So, Nina, when we met, I was probably actually at my very worst, which is interesting because so you were seeing what was actually a shell of a person. But essentially what had happened, what I thought had happened was that I'd fallen while trail running. So but to backtrack a little bit from that, I'd got into running in a very gentle and slow way with my dog. And it was working for me fine. I was getting more and more good at running. But what I didn't realize is running it's quite a stress on the system. And that was kind of adding on to multiple other stresses in my life, which the main one at that time was I was running my own business, and we'd been really successfully running it from my house for many years, but it had taken over so much space in my house and it was doing so well that we decided, well, when I say we, it's mostly me, but with the support of my family, that it was time for the business to move out of our house. And so I started renting quite big premises. In retrospect, way too big and way too expensive in retrospect. But if I looked at what I was doing at that time, it would have been fine if things had carried on like that. But it so happened that the products that I was selling, the major retailers suddenly started getting into, and it sounds, I don't know, it's not 100% relevant for the story, but the business that I owned was called Moo Moo Kids, and the product that had been flying for me was what I called Moo Moo Kiddie Grows, which are baby grows in bigger sizes. As I kind of had just signed leases, etc., on my new premises, there was this global trend of the onesie. And what happened was, whereas Woolies and the like were only doing baby grows up to sort of a maximum of 18 months. And my babies were quite big. And so they were sort of not able to buy baby grows from even 12 months because the 18 month size didn't fit them. And that's why I'd seen this little gap in the market and was making these bigger ones. Suddenly, not only were they doing, bigger sizes in baby grows, but they were actually doing onesies all the way up to adult sizes. So it was challenging times and financially quite stressful. So I think in retrospect for my body, and to add into that stress, I'd also sort of a few years prior to that, on the advice of my psychologist, which is so bizarre, but I'd said to my psychologist, I've just finished breastfeeding babies. I am feeling devastated about my boobs at the moment. And it was at that stage such a big sort of big boob trend time. In retrospect, looking back now, it was a thing at that stage. If I look at the programs that were on TV, it was that programs where basically people definitely all had breast implants. And I had thought it was going to be something that I was going to discuss with my psychologist, and she was going to say, Cam, get over yourself. This is a ridiculous little like obsession that you've got. In time, you're not even going to think this is an important thing. But she didn't do that. She said, Cam, I don't see why you shouldn't just get breast implants. I was like, she's like, I've got them. I didn't know. I mean, I've got some. I think they're amazing. I just think that, and at that stage, this was prior. So my business was flying. I had money. She's like, you can do this for yourself. It can be an empowering moment. So I had also, to add to the stresses on my body, I had for that at that stage, probably sort of 2 or 3 years worth of breast implants.
Okay, so kind of like you had breast implants, you had kind of like stress on the body from running, you had stress from work, mental stress because of business kind of like having flown, and now kind of like kind of like belts being tightened because of what is happening in the marketplace.
And a big monthly expense that I hadn't had previously, which was this rent, just each month I had to pay in this big amount. The business wasn't doing terribly, but it was just tight in a way that I hadn't anticipated it being tight.
Okay.
So yes, so there was all of that mounting, all of that pressure on my body, which I didn't even, consider a thing. And then what felt like the absolute final straw was a fall I did while trail running. So, I mean, firstly, trail running is quite hectic on the body. And this was sort of a downhill run. And I love that, you can get into a beautiful flow as you are running down. And then suddenly I just tripped over a root. Now, that shouldn't be a big thing. If your body's feeling resilient and fine, you will just heal from I scraped, I sort of fell slightly onto this side. My right leg is the leg that didn't come through kind of thing. So I was sort of like expecting to, and fell heavily, but I didn't break anything. I thought, I'll be back running the next week. But it, for my body, was the final straw. It completely and utterly, I went into, I think it triggered the fibromyalgia, as the final straw, but it wasn't the cause, but it was the accumulation
of it. And I think that's such a big thing that people often forget, is they get diagnosed with a scary diagnosis, some form of autoimmune, a cancer, or this or that, and they don't realize that there are lifestyle principles or practices that they should have probably been doing, and that they hadn't been doing, that had impacted kind of the end result, and that because everything is often hidden. And often when we ask like, how are you doing? I'm fine, I'm good. We don't actually ever take time in the morning to like ask the body or ourselves, like, how am I really feeling, today? What is the story? Am I needing more rest? Am I needing more communication, interaction with friends and family? Am I needing quiet? What is it that I'm really needing? And by the sounds of things, like that's like what happened to you with the fall. It was just like, okay, she hasn't been listening. We're going to make her listen one way or the other. And I think we've all had that fall, that Cam fall.
Yeah. And added to that, the other thing was sort of prior, I'd been actually doing quite a lot of kind of Tim Noakes inspired banting. And I'd realized with all the running I was doing that I didn't need to have low carbs. And with low carbs, I'd cut out sort of gluten predominantly. And this was years back. But I'd realized, I need carbs, which was right. But what I didn't need, bearing in mind I have a celiac disposition, was I didn't need gluten. But I'd come to the point where I was like, hey, I should be able to eat anything. I'm not gaining weight because I was running it off. But I was also adding the stress of for what for my body is something. It's actually adding a foreign body to me if I eat gluten. So I'd added that back into my diet because I was like, what the heck, I'm running, I can do anything. In retrospect, that was also a bad move. So I ended up, kind of not able to run. I was put on anti-inflammatories, and in retrospect, like way too, you're not supposed to be put on them chronically. And now that I read in the literature, it actually if you're on anti-inflammatories for an extended period of time, I mean, the impact on your gut is unbelievable. But B, the inflammatory process, it doesn't switch off.
Yeah.
It dampens it for that time period, but it actually sort of kind of, as I understand it, almost turns it so that your body doesn't switch off that inflammatory response. It's just on. It's just,
and there's a reason why it is on in the first place, which I think we often forget, in the sense that, you know, the body is telling us, is giving us a warning sign. And, you know, if there's pain, something needs to shift and change. And I think this is kind of like where your whole journey into healing kind of like started, where you realized, okay, actually it all is related to the gut. And as soon as we slowly start to become more cognizant of that, we realize that. And the reason why I bring that up is, like, I've just hosted our 7-day clean eating challenge, and the focus this time was like on gut health. So we had loads of guest speakers on gut health. So this is why I'm loving speaking to you now, because I mean, you've just completed your course at the Culinary Nutrition expert program, blah blah blah. We'll get to that in a moment as well. So I know, like, that food and nutrition is super important to you, and that's why I'm so glad to be chatting with you. But I think so many of us, if we've got a headache, if we've got a pain in a shoulder, if whatever the story is, we think that that's where that's the core, or that's the root area, and we actually forget that it's not. And like you're saying, you know, if you're taking meds or whatnot, they're all impacting your gut. Okay, so I'm going to get off my high horse, and you continue.
Absolutely right.
Into how you got, you know, that realization that, you know, it was the gut.
I mean, I had the most unpleasant experiences with rheumatologists, because I thought, okay, there's something, you know, this is some sort of inflammatory response. You know, I've changed. I'm ill, you know, and you just go to these experts and they run these tests and they're like, okay, well, you know, the most you've got is possibly fibromyalgia, but it's kind of implying it's basically in your head. And so from a medical point of view, every turn I took gave me no help, only drugs that I wasn't willing to take. I mean, some of the things I just wasn't willing to take them. So the only one that I am still on, and this is also a historical thing and so interesting, and one of these things that we could jump on a high horse about, is I'm on an SSRI, and I have been on SSRIs for essentially all my adult life, except for when having children and breastfeeding. Like, aside from that, so they changed my SSRI to one called Simgen, which they said would help with chronic pain as well as depression.
Do you want to give us all an update as to what SSRIs are?
So SSRIs are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and they are antidepressants. And I mean, one of the, I guess, you know, the kind of, well, there are many of them, but they're essentially all the same thing. And they are essentially in your brain blocking receptors for serotonin so that there's more serotonin circulating in your brain. Now, as it happens in my case, and I've now done genetic testing, those do work for me, but the question is whether they should be working for me, A, and B, I shouldn't need them now, but part of my journey has been to try and come off them myself. And I had the most horrific withdrawal. So bad, just these electric shocks through my head. When you don't know when it's going to happen, but just zinging. It's the most horrific experience. And the only way I've researched it to get off them would be over several years, and literally you need almost equipment, because the drug companies don't make lower doses. It's very convenient for them not to, because you can't get off them very easily. And I would need to literally sort of drop off 1 or 2 granules every month or something would be the only way I could do it without getting this terrible withdrawal. So I'm pretty much at this point, I can't function without, and I have accepted that I may well have to be on them for life, because my brain has adapted to having that change, and to change it back to how it would have been without them is going to be such a long process that I'm not sure if or when I'm going to undertake that.
And I think that's such an important aspect to note as well, is that, especially with these intense medications, is you can't just like switch a flip a switch, so to speak. Like, you've got to be so mindful, and you've got to be under like an expert's supervision in a sense as to how, if it's even possible, to wean yourself off. And I think that's where a lot of people can get into trouble. I mean, it's always good to experiment. I'm for that, like you did. You're like, holy smoke,
look, Nina, I mean, according to my psychiatrist, that I was literally with her a few months ago, and I said to her, what about coming off, and according to her, and I said, because I had this terrible experience before, I can't do that again. How, if I wanted to get off them, how would I? So she was firstly all very reassuring about how my dose is half a normal dose, and it hardly counts as a dose, but like whatever. And then she said, yeah, and we could do it, and it would take about a month. I know from what I've read that is absolutely not true. So unfortunately, the whole medical profession thinks that it is an acceptable way, and then when you get these withdrawals, they claim that you need the drug because you're getting depressed or anxious. I mean, the anxiety related to having these electric shocks through your head, I can't explain how anxious I was. Anxiety to a whole new level. But it wasn't anxiety from anything except withdrawal. It's something I'm a little bit passionate about at the moment, as you may have be able to tell.
I love it. But it's such important topics that need to get discussed and made, people need to be made aware of it. And we can't just, sweep it under the floor mat. We do need to be speaking about these things. And
it is shocking that I'm paying this drug company for a drug that I no longer need, but I will probably be paying them for life. And this is what is happening. And it is big pharma. And I can assure you, when I was put on it, I was never told, this is the potential repercussions.
Yeah. So, and that's the sad thing, kind of like probably like, all those years back, when you had to go onto it, I don't know, if they would have looked at your gut and would have been, okay, let's sort out the gut here and then, because your gut does make serotonin, and okay, we won't go into the bio of it all, but like if you could have taken like 6 months or a year then to be like, okay, we're going to do it this way, how much more amazing. I mean, yeah, you wouldn't be in the position you are. With that given, everyone has to go their journey, and it's probably so that we're having conversations like that, so that there is a 16-year-old or an 18-year-old who could be watching this and thinking, oh shit, I've got to take this drug. Maybe give me 4 months to look at my gut and see if I can swivel things around from there.
I mean, that was certainly not even, to be honest, I'm not even sure how recent that research is on we've only just started figuring out this gut microbiome, the fact that is actually what is manufacturing us, our serotonin. I mean, they didn't even know that. So to be fair to the system, this is knowledge that we have now, which we need to use. And one just hopes, as you say, those 16 and 18-year-olds and the doctors out there that are prescribing these things, if they could just give the patient that little bit of a chance to potentially just heal their gut and fix the whole thing. Yeah. A little bit of exercise along the way.
It's also not easy for the doctors, the healthcare practitioners out there, in the sense, because often you do have people coming in and say, just give me a pill. Like, I'm so over this, I just want a pill. And, that is, again, like, society, what you were chatting about right at the beginning with regards to like breast implants and like how it was so normal, everyone in TV and the TV sitcoms and shows, they were doing that, it was a cool thing to be, seen to be doing it, we were all chatting about, feeling more feminine and, empowering ourselves. So it's that kind of thing again, where, okay, is it important?
And I mean, similar with the breast implant, the breast implants, one's not told the potential side effects, but they didn't actually even know. I mean, when I was sold mine, it was like, it's new technology. They are now textured, which now we know is actually worse than the smooth ones, which were prior, but they thought they'd fixed a whole lot of potential issues by making them textured. And so, you won't get this and you won't get that. And it's just, they don't even mention, which, by the way, one of the things that is true is that you would still need them replaced every 10 years. I mean, I doubt I would have done it if I thought that was the case, that I was going to have to face quite extensive op every 10 years. Yes. But they don't tell you these things, and you are thinking this is going to be such fun. It's going to, improve my self-esteem. And you know what? It does. I completely, like, from having an issue and feeling like, I was like, well, this is pretty cool. And I am feeling pretty fab. And because I'd also at the same time wanted to have more babies. And it was like my little consolation prize that my husband wasn't up for more babies. And I was like, okay, but I've got this, this is like, because I don't need to breastfeed anymore. I'm going to do this thing. And it's going to be like my acceptance of the fact that we're just having 2 babies and no more. And, it's just, it's going to be, make me feel better. And of course, it really didn't do that ultimately. But the first 2 weeks were pretty cool.
First 2 weeks. And then, like you're saying, like we were chatting before we started recording, it's like, breast implant disease illness, massive. And again, maybe the research hadn't been done fully or extensively, back then.
I mean, there's actually even a cancer related to it that's been linked to what happens in that capsule that forms around each implant. So each implant, what your body does to protect itself very sensibly from this foreign object is it forms this capsule around the implant. And the textured implants actually tend to form an even thicker capsule. And it's actually the body's trying to encapsulate all the toxins that are actually being leached out of that implant into your body. So it's trying its damnedest to protect you. But obviously some is leaking through. It's affecting your immune responses in multiple ways that you're not aware of. I can go into some of the side effects one gets after explanting that you just realize how much disgustingness was inside
there was in the system because of it.
Yeah.
And
so
go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say that if you do decide that you may have symptoms of breast implant illness, which are remarkably similar to any autoimmune disease. So the symptoms are fatigue. You can get specifically breast pain and tingling, but it's nerve issues. It's achy joints. Anything that you can imagine could be an autoimmune issue, because it's actually overwhelming your immune system by having these toxins right inside you.
And so close to your lymph, your biggest, most prevalent lymph nodes, in the body.
So you have to, when you get them out, there are specific, and there's a breast implant illness and healing by Nicole, which is the massive Facebook page, which is international. But then there's also a local breast implant illness South Africa page, where there's actually a list of surgeons that do it properly, the removal, which is called explant. So it's just like you get them implanted, then you get them explanted. And to explant correctly, they need to do what's called an en bloc, ENBLOC, so en bloc, total capsulectomy. And what that means is they take out the implant plus all of that, and it's a very, very difficult operation to do because they have to peel the full capsule plus the implant out and then take it out as one thing. If they don't do it like that and they leave your capsule inside, it's full of toxins that your body's then got to process. And ultimately, it will still actually, your body will see that whole capsule as a foreign body. It's still gonna, you may well still have autoimmune symptoms. But so they've got to take the whole thing out so that your body knows, oh, it's out. And then it's so interesting how many the detox that your body then does, and the smell in your armpits of all the toxins that your body is trying to now release. So I don't wear any antiperspirants. I still don't, because I'm just wanting my body to release as much. I've actually also got a sauna, Nina, because to sweat out as much of this toxic stuff as I can. Luckily, I sweat very easily, and I feel like I have detoxed a huge amount. But detox is really important afterwards.
I must actually send you the details. I don't know if you remember, was she at the studio when you were there as well? Helen, who was also living in Tokai, and she opened, is it Healing? No, I'm going to get the name wrong. In Stellenbosch, like a detox clinic there.
Wow.
But all kind of like with vitamin C, with ozone therapy, because I
have my own ozone machine.
So I must, and you know, kind of like the coffee enemas and this, that, and the next. They do a whole load of, and they've got a whole load of doctors. And when I think of the name, I'll pop it in our description here as well. But that's fantastic. She's also got an amazing setup there that she's created. I'm going to try to get her on as well, because she had breast cancer. She was a bio person doing, tests on, research on HIV AIDS and all of that. So she knows how to read research papers, and then kind of like going through the whole chemo process and then just realizing, what that, did to the body with regards to creating toxins in it, and how do you get the toxicity level out of your system and your body. So yes. All right. So that's kind of like a little on the side, but how did that lead you to finding your...
So I guess the point is, it felt like I'd been very let down by the medical system as it stands currently. I was not getting any better through any intervention that they'd recommended. So it becomes then one's own journey of healing. And I think one of the beauties of the world as we have it at the moment is the fact that one has the ability to find out things. So the healing power of food came to me as a series of small steps. But essentially, I first of all, based on these genetic tests that we had done, realized that gluten was absolute no for me. And I cut that out. It helped, but it wasn't the full answer. And I know that my system, based on the fact that it's now my immune system is very sensitive, it sees gluten as an enemy, and it also attacks me as a result. Now, I'm not sure, I've had an official fibromyalgia diagnosis, but I have other autoimmune systems that have just not been diagnosed. And what's amazing with the way things are, one realizes that actually it doesn't matter. Whether it's, I've got very clicky joints when I'm in a flare, and I've got terrible back pain, which it doesn't matter actually what autoimmune, but I have autoimmune reactions.
It's all just chronic inflammation, what comes down to at the end of the day. So you've got chronic, and most of us have a level of chronic inflammation, and that's just going to shoot off in whatever. For someone, it's going to be cancer. For someone, it's going to be a heart disease. For someone, it's going to be fibromyalgia. For someone, it's it's going to be a branch or a combination of the branches.
That's right. Have you read or listened to anything by Gabor Mate?
No.
Okay. Well, he says, and it really just hit me very well. It's true. I mean, he says, in his opinion, well, not in his opinion, in his clinical experience, he's a doctor, but autoimmune issues are a result of suppressing emotions. So any person will have a tendency, you know, how you're saying it manifests as, in some people, cancer, in some people this. In my kind of personality, which is incredibly sensitive and overly aware of my impact on other people's emotions, so I will suppress mine to my own cost, my own health cost, rather than, say, hey, I've got a problem, or I'm really angry at the moment. You know, I'll just suppress. And he's identified it as a complete and utter thing, that if you do that, your chances of getting autoimmune diseases specifically are much higher. So anyway, I have that's one of my sort of, I suppose, psychological challenges, is to not suppress as much and verbalize outwards and get those things out. And this is potentially why my inflammation manifested as autoimmune. So I think I first of all cut out gluten and started to feel a lot better. And then I actually went very hardcore. There's what's called the autoimmune protocol, which is cutting out not just gluten, it's and not dairy as well, including dairy as well, but then also it's legumes, it's all grains, it's essentially anything that your body could be reacting to, even eggs. It's quite a restrictive plan. And I actually did that for sort of 8 weeks and had bloods done. It's very interesting to look at those bloods done during that time, because, I mean, everything just dropped to complete normality, where it had been completely, in terms of inflammation, off the charts. It's very hard to maintain that. It's quite a restrictive diet, and you're not even supposed to. You're supposed to gradually introduce new things and see what your reaction is. It's that I found incredibly challenging to do, and I sort of did it wrong and added back in too much at once, and essentially messed up the experiment. But my big kind of thing, that's why it's taken me so long to actually really get to a point of healing, is it took me a long time to completely eliminate dairy. But now essentially my two triggers are gluten and dairy. You know, if I keep off those two, I am a lot better. And I can have goat dairy, but it's just cow dairy, and I'm not lactose intolerant. In fact, I tolerate lactose completely fine. It's actually one of the proteins, not lactose, that's in cow's milk, and I've researched it, but I've forgotten what that one is called. But anyway, it's one that's in them, even if they're lactose free. And unfortunately, even A2 dairy, I don't know if you've seen those, are supposed to be more tolerated. I can't tolerate A2 either. The specific protein that my system gets confused with is in all cow's dairy. So it took me a while, because, and I know it's such a silly thing, but I just love a cup of normal tea with milk in the morning. And it felt like a punishment not to have that.
So it's kind of like it was one of those things you had to get your head around, to be like, you know, it's not punishment if I don't have it, to create a new habit or a different kind of aspect around morning routine.
Yes, and also to love yourself enough to not have it.
To put yourself
funny. Yes, it's a funny sort of a thing, but there's some sort of funny part of myself that thought I was being nice to myself, but actually not, because I was punishing, you know, like it was hurting me. But it's a funny thing, but it's almost like you have to be in a positive frame of mind to allow yourself the freedom to take dairy out. And I mean, I actually only properly did it probably almost in anticipation of this culinary nutrition expert program course that I did last year. Probably because it was putting myself first, saying, this is something I'm interested in. And okay. And then I guess the other thing, Nina, is that as part of the journey, what I've found so interesting and rewarding is learning about food, learning about nutrition, and seeing the reaction in myself to changes I was making, completely veering away from processed foods and seeing the impact that was having, and actually realizing, wow, my back is not sore. I am not as clicky in my joints. I can do more exercise. I can do more things that I couldn't do before. I'm getting stronger. I'm getting better. Mm-hmm. And then, it's a spiral that you can then actually get to the point where now I'm feeling like I'm almost, I still need to be careful. I'll tell you about something to do with the Culinary Nutrition Expert Program, what we had to do as the final thing, which kind of pushed me into a flare because it was stressful. But I found that how much healing one can do through food. And that's not to discount all the other things one needs, which is self-care on a big level, community, a whole lot of other aspects. But kind of if you start with food, you can grow those other things on top of it. That's how it worked for me anyway. Yeah.
Lovely. I love it. And I love what you bring up, and you say, like, because that's such a big point. It's like, it's not just the food, like you were saying, it's so many other things. It's, being in the right community with the right people. It's the mental disposition. It's having those practices in place that are going to, give you that positive mindset. But I think for a lot of us, nutrition and food plays such a big role, that because it's also one of those aspects that we can see and is tangible, and that we actually have control over. Often we think we don't, but we do. We have control when we go to the shops to choose what we put in our shopping basket. If we go and just hang out in the fresh fruit aisle, or if we're going to go hang out, where the chips and chocolates and all the processed foods are. Like we actually do have that power and the choice to make. So just a quick one, kind of like, did it take you a while to find this course? Was it something that you found and like literally just signed up, like, I'm going to do this? Because most courses are like an investment. So it's, not just an investment of money, but of time and energy as well. So was it something that you had to think hard and long about? Like, how was that process? Or did you just kind of like read about it and I was like, this sounds right, I'm going to do it?
No, it was more of a long, slow process. But I have someone I know who I was very interested in the course she'd done. She did a health coaching course, and it was through the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, I think, IIN. And I actually asked her what she thought of the course she'd done, which she absolutely loved, but it wasn't 100% gelling with where I was right then, and I'm not sure even now what I'm going to do with my qualification yet. But because she is a physio originally, and then been a whole lot of other things, and then did this health coaching course, she could kind of use her physio qualification to do things that I wouldn't be able to do, like blood tests for clients and things like that, because she's a physio. So she was kind of using things in a different way. I didn't feel like it just wasn't quite gelling for me. But what she then also sent me is, she said, I've got a friend that's done this course and loved it. And it so happens that the course that she'd done was this Culinary Nutrition Expert Program course. So I knew someone that had loved it, and then I started researching it, and did a few. The people that run it are the main person. Her name is Megan Telpner, and she's in Canada, and her husband is actually kind of in also integrative nutrition, and he actually runs a practice, and she runs this culinary school, and they are both quite quirky characters and quite fun to they do most of the content. And so I investigated, and I must admit, being in rands, it was a huge financial commitment. And I'm not sure why we decided to go for it, but I guess I was that keen, and it has been an incredible experience. But having come, one of the things that you have to do as your final assessment, and this is just to touch on what I said about the flair, is you have to present a workshop on food, and you have to prepare at least 6 to 8 meals, well, 6 to 8 items, recipes, live with an audience, and based on a condition that you've used the whole way through your course. So you actually really are an expert in this particular condition that you've chosen. And of course, they allow you to do it in front of friends and family. But for some reason, and this is like where sometimes I don't understand myself, but I do in some ways and I don't in other ways. For some reason, I decided that I was going to just do this for real. And I was only going to, my whole course, that the condition I'd chosen was eczema. And I didn't feel like putting in all the effort of doing this workshop, getting all the ingredients, doing this whole thing. And it was just going to be for people that didn't even have eczema. So I put it out to, I'm part of an amazing food club in Constantia. It's called the Constantia Food Club, and it's sort of foodies. And I just thought they might be the kind of people who, and there's quite a lot on this WhatsApp group. And I got permission from the owner to put out that I was doing this workshop. And I also put it on social media a bit. And I also put it even just in our little WhatsApp group for the road. So the people that I had attending, I didn't know any of them before the workshop. So that was an added stress that I didn't have to put on myself. So not sure why I did, but it did make it an incredibly rewarding experience doing this workshop and getting this amazing feedback from everyone about how naturally I presented and how, my passion showed through and how they felt that they'd learned a lot of things. So I guess maybe that's why I did it, but also because of that stress and talking, and also standing. My back doesn't like standing very much for so long. I was ill for, I suppose, I didn't take off work. So the next day, which was a Sunday, I was completely in bed and slowly recovered during the week. So, so it made me feel like I'm not sure that doing workshops like that would necessarily be something I can do all the time, although the coaches assure me that you do build the resilience to do it. So that was the one thing. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is I haven't really got complete clarity on what I'm actually going to do in terms of, I've got a normal day job. I kind of really, really value that regular income that the normal day job gives me. But it's not my passion. So there's this, but also because of having owned a business previously, I'm scared to do that again and put myself under financial pressure when I know how ill that made me before.
Yeah. And I just see like my screen is getting darker and darker and darker. We have no light. I have no light. So like soon I'm just going to be like a black screen. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. I'm like, oh my goodness, look at that. So yes. So well, that's exciting. You know what? It's you bring up so many things. One, I think that is really important is that when you find something like a course, a workshop that speaks to you and you've done the research and whatnot, that often it is going to be a high investment commitment to doing something, and that when you are 100% certain about that you're then able to enter that feeling a lot more confident and comfortable. Plus, then you're also going to show up a lot more. Like you're going to attend all the lectures and lessons. You're going to really ask questions when you need to, and you're going to do the work, because often if things are for free or it's quite cheap, you kind of like, oh, well, I'll just skip it or I'll miss it. Whereas like if you're investing, you're actually really going to show up.
In fact, I graduated with honors, Nina. So I not only did the work, I did it well, which I loved. It was intense at the time because we had at least 2 assignments due a week. And some of them, I thought there's a recipe assignment and a written assignment. So I thought the recipe would be 1 recipe, but each week it was at least 3. So I had to be very disciplined with my time, which was possible because it wasn't the week. The course is just 3 months. So it was like, go for it, Cam. This, and and know that you will recover at the end, which is essentially now. I'm still in that sort of like trying to work out what I'm going to do with this, not having as much on my plate. And interestingly enough, not doing nearly as much things that I thought I would do now that I have more time, because it's just like, I don't have those deadlines. So a bit tricky.
Good. I'm very excited to see where it's going to be taking you and what is going to be happening with the work, if anything at all. But I know we'll probably be chatting again soon and hearing what is going to be happening. So thank you very, very much for being here, and look forward to a conversation sometime soon.
Lots of love. Thank you, Nina. Bye.